A few weeks ago, I was asked to write a blog about the journey that we've taken so far in the unit I work in the northeast of England. We are on a journey to full continuity, and the reference to the plane and taking off was just kind of I do a lot of thinking when I take the dog out for a walk, and that's really where my ideas kind of come together. And I really felt it was very much around this journey and around very much thinking about where we've been on for a number of years. We've spent lots of time thinking about or hearing our colleagues say that the staffing isn't safe, that it's really concerning, that it's a real challenge daily on the delivery suite, and in the community they've got huge caseloads and the community midwives can't deliver the care they would really love to do. And the opportunity in 2016 absolutely was presented to us in the latest form, and I'm sure Lesley will come to some of the historic opportunities and aims to move towards where we're aiming to now around delivering continuity of carer. And the research is all there. I'm not going to talk about all of that today, and I think many of you are familiar with all of that, and how we can massively impact the outcomes of mums and babies and their families. It's the one time that we can absolutely have a generational impact on the outcomes of mums and babies, particularly from a public health point of view, and particularly from a mental health point of view. Very much around the relationship, the belonging, and very much that love and the kindness that comes with the continuity of care. But equally, my passion for improving job satisfaction in midwifery is absolutely foremounted in everything that I'm trying to do. But it's not easy, and I think what I've talked about a lot in things previously is very much around it's scary and it's hard and it's moving to a place that midwives have never been to before. And actually we're destabilising and changing how midwives work on a daily basis. Midwives have been very, in this country over the last 10 to 15 years, we've become to an extent institutionalised, where we attend a delivery suite, where we provide a shift and we go home. And from a community point of view, we're working to between 96 and 150 in some instances caseloads of women per midwife, and it's just not sustainable. So that's a little bit of background to sort of the journey where we're heading to, and really contemplating what I wanted to share today and what might be helpful for people that are maybe watching today. Was actually thinking about some of the top 10 tips on our journey so far that might help teams out there who may be clinical midwives, maybe student midwives thinking about the future and the career that they're moving into. It might be heads of midwifery that are helping to steer this journey. And I think what's really important is to understand that we're not there yet. This isn't a story of success. It's a story of a journey. And to say that it's a success would be too confident, and certainly that's not where we are yet, but we are sharing where the journey has taken us to date. So in the form of the top 10 tips, number one I think is about belief, and it's about the commitment to change. And I think if we can't develop that commitment and truly believe this is where we need to go to for our families and for our staff, then I think that belief is really hard, and it comes bi-directional. So if the head of midwifery doesn't believe this is the right thing to do, it's really hard for the board and the staff and the team working in the unit to move things forward. But similarly the other way around, if the non-execs, the board, the service leads, the chief executive are not of the opinion that this is the right thing to do either, then it's really hard for a service, no matter how much you believe, to move things forward. So I think it's that understanding of what the background is and what the commitment is to driving this journey that's essential. Number two is leading with a sense of purpose. So really considering the aim and what we want to achieve here. I think one of the things that we've learned over the last 2 years is that one team will not impact the full transformation. Having one team will impact 280 women on average when we look at the methodology around continuity of carer. We have approximately 5,000 women in the service I work in, and we want to influence every one of those women. Every one of those women deserves that level of care, regardless of background, regardless of ethnicity. We know, however, that deprivation, ethnicity absolutely plays a part in some of the outcomes that we see on a daily basis. And for that purpose, we've started our journey based on, in our area, deprivation. But actually, in order to have full impact on outcomes, but also full impact on the workforce in the acute care and how it can really improve the workforce and the stability and the safety in the acute care, then full transformation is the answer, because that's where you're going to get the midwives who are caring for the women in the community, following those women in, and we start to staff the unit for the women that are attending the unit rather than a roster which has a ceiling amount of midwives that are available. Number 3 is around consider your workforce carefully. The most wonderful guidance came out just on the right day last year in October 2021 from NHS England. And that gave us a guide to be able to implement continuity of care. And I think on reflection, it's something that was absolutely necessary and maybe would have been great coming a little bit earlier down that journey, but was fantastic. And within that, the national team talked very much around the building blocks that we need to be able to deliver this model. And one of those building blocks is staffing. And it's very clear within that guidance that being birth rate plus compliant is an absolutely essential before we move forward on this, and something that we need from a safety point of view. So if we're birth rate plus compliant and we have that funded establishment, the challenge back would be, and not in a safety, not compromising safety in any stretch of the imagination, but it's really considering, are we hiding behind some of those bricks? We will always have vacancies, and if we rewound 2 years ago, we would have had vacancies then. And if we stick to the traditional model, we will have vacancies going forward. Acknowledging that some people are a bit scared and we are losing some staff to different units across the patch as we start to move forward in this model, but there are vacancies there. So it's about monitoring those vacancies and trying to fill those vacancies as well as still moving forward. Because if we wait for vacancies to be filled in 100%, then we will be here for a while and movement won't happen. And it's taking that balanced approach between knowing that the end point is the great place we need to be, and we need to take that slow, safe approach that's assured around safe staffing numbers to get to that place, to get to the end result. Number 4 is the NHS Workforce Tool. And people have maybe heard me say this before, but I was so in the right place at the right time, and a little bit cheeky when I contacted Trixie, who's our national lead, and said to Trixie, I don't get this. I was on the naughty step. I wasn't delivering continuity of care in the northeast of England. The regional chief nurse had got in touch and said, now, Joanne, you are not performing well in this, and we really need to look at how you're going to manage to improve on this. And so in a darkened room one night, I tweeted Trixie, who said, have you got a couple of hours on Teams? And she walked through the Workforce Tool. Now, I was just hugely fortunate and very thankful that I had the opportunity. But the Workforce Tool works. People consider what we need lots and lots and lots of more midwives to be able to deliver this, and the answer is no, we don't. If we work through the Workforce Tool, when you're birth rate plus compliant from a budgeted establishment point of view, this is possible. Number 5 is work collaboratively with commissioners and local authority. The health inequalities that we see today in women and families is not all of our responsibility. And we do know as midwives, we think we can change the world, and actually we're going to take responsibility for all of it and fix everything. But interestingly, and it is quite interesting actually, we've had our day 1 of our UNICEF assessment today at the trust I work at, and actually on reflection, thinking about how many years we've tried to improve breastfeeding rates and how many years we've tried to decrease the women that are smoking, and just 2 of the metrics during pregnancy. And as a head of midwifery, really thinking, what am I going to say this month about trying to improve those inequalities? But this will make a difference. We've already seen in some of our areas of deprivation where it can significantly decrease smoking. So if we can bring smoking down for those 280 women, If we can then do that for 5,000 women, and then look at our, the LMS and filter that through the rest of the country, what difference long term will that have on health outcomes for our next generation? So it's not just our responsibility as midwives, but that of the commissioners and the local authority to engage in this transformation and help us. So based on that comes the cheekiness. So squatters' rights in the family centre is a thing of the future. So taking on board the fallout of COVID and what opportunities we've had to be able to work alongside commissioners and local authority to look at things like what estate is free, and actually how can you help us in moving forward in this journey together to really significantly impact our local families. Oh, and by the way, it's in the NHS contract, so please give us a hand. Number 6 is consider a roadmap. So one of the things that we've learned over the last 2 years is that a strategy, something that arrives in a paper that lands in somebody's inbox or may well come in a PDF on a WhatsApp, is not going to create buy-in. People need to know what's going to happen to me next week or next month, and where will I be within this journey. We need to set ahead a roadmap that really thinks about where we aim to be, by when, and who will it'll involve, and to engage staff, users, and the organisation within that. And I think very much as well, it's about considering on that journey that we maintain the rules of continuity, and we talk about these golden threads. And the golden threads are the headcount, the skill mix, the caseload. If we have too many people or too few people in that team, we're not going to be able to provide birth availability or acute availability. If the skill mix isn't right and we have all acute midwives versus community, historic community and acute midwives, and actually that ability to share those skills and knowledge will not develop as we move through. And we need to very much think about escalation. And I know that's something that personally within our unit has been a real topic of conversation over the winter, when Omicron hit, and on the 7th of January, I'll never forget, we had 30 whole-time equivalents that were all isolating and wondered how we're going to get through to Monday. So I think actually it's about considering that continuity works because of the research and because of the ratios and because of the headcount. And by having the ratios that we do, that gives the midwives the opportunity to deliver the women, care for them antenatally, care for them postnatally, and create the outcomes. By filling in gaps in the acute unit, whilst what we need to do is maintain safety at that very point in time, is not the long-term answer, and that will create burnout, and that's what we are moving away from, and we will not commit to, but with continuity of care. So how we escalate within our unit is so important. And consider consultation. So at the very beginning of this, when we set our first strategy, which doesn't look anything like our strategy now, I would say, as we started meeting with staff side and with some of our colleges and our staff as we moved towards the strategy, the most wonderful HR manager I work with said, Joanne, I think you really need to consider consultation. It's what the unions were asking for and what staff side were asking for, and it scared me a little bit. But actually, it is the best thing that we've done. And I would really, whilst it was very, very hard, and it was a long process of a number of months, having lots and lots of one-to-ones with staff, really listening to staff and hearing how concerned staff were, and thinking about how this was going to affect staff on an individual basis. It was absolutely a task well worth doing. What we did was consider the standards for the NMC standards for midwifery practice. Now, if we reflect on that, domain 2 is around safe and effective midwifery care and promoting continuity of care and carer at every juncture of our profession. So it's reflecting on actually that's something that as midwives we should all be delivering. It's also considering the things for our midwives and being advocates for our midwives and ensuring their pay is protected in such a huge change, and ensuring there is a reasonable change of notice of change for rotation and the things that will affect them in their daily life. So actually the consultation was really a great thing to do, although probably the hardest thing I've done in my career. The other side of it was, which was slightly funny, was that when we started looking at some people's job descriptions, they were based on health authorities that didn't even exist in some of the hospitals that had been knocked down. So it was probably a very good job to do. Number 8 was, how do we pick the team? So during our consultation, the question that I would say that was posed the most was, how are you going to put people in different teams? What are you going to do? And at one point on a night where I was feeling quite sort of stressed by it all, with the continuity of care midwife Amy, who I think may well be in our audience tonight. So if there's any technical knowledge required, she can come on through the chat, I think, and support within that. I think Amy and I at one point thought we would be standing in evening gowns with a lottery ball spinner, thinking this is and in team 3 we will be having midwife number 204. But that that is really a real challenge to think, well, how do we do that? And I think the advice I would give moving forward is, it's not just about picking a number out of a hat and putting somebody in a team. And after being on one of our national leadership events that was supporting us as heads of midwifery through COVID, that Jackie Dunkley-Bent had put on, there was a wonderful lady on there who talked through about leadership in the pandemic, and she talked about choice and influence. And actually, one of the things, control and influence, sorry. And one of the things I realised that we weren't doing was giving our staff the influence to be able to be involved in the allocation of teams. What we were doing was very much controlling everything about this strategy, up to the point we'd be controlling where they were working. So what we did was we went out to the staff and said, if you had a choice of which team you would like to work in, considering, does it want to be near where you live? Consider your children's schools, and do you want to be potentially doing safeguarding around, sort of the friends that your children go to school with? Think of all of these things and provide some choices, and that's what happened. And then by the powers of a big Excel sheet, we started to create a plan, and this became our tracker. And it's the most wonderful thing, but it's a thing that gives me the most headaches on a daily basis. And actually, if you printed it out now, it's now 5'6" high by 5 foot wide. So never print it out is the answer. We did one day, and I have put one of my daughters next to it, and yes, it was 5'6". But I think the other things to consider on more of a serious note is actually give people choice and bring them into that. But then, as we've moved through this journey, what we've realised is that there are other elements that you absolutely need to consider. And I think with every team that goes out, we learn more all of the time. So we need to think about location of where people live. We need to think about the team numbers and ensure that works. The whole time equivalent is really important. And what we've learned is that anything less than 0.64 whole time equivalent isn't going to work. And actually, having 2 6.4 whole time equivalents within a team, you really need to consider that with regard to birth availability. Which is the delivering unit that the ladies will be delivering in. So we've got 2 acute units, and one of the things that we didn't get particularly right in the first sort of in phase 2 of our transformation was that some of our teams straddled both acute units. And what we found from that is that the midwives working in those teams didn't know if they were delivering babies in Unit A or Unit B. And actually those units are 34 miles apart. So it created a huge travelling pressure onto those midwives, and also which unit they attended. So we've moved forward from that now. And what we're going to be doing is having women from team who we're going to allocate women to the teams with regard where they're planning to have their babies rather than their GPs. So that's something that we learned very quickly over the last few weeks. Skills and training and the preceptorship. Have we got preceptors in each one of the teams? And what we've created something called a skills passport, so that people have got strong skills in all different areas in that team to offset each other. Have we got safeguarding experience in the team, the hospital community ratio I mentioned, and where people live? So that was quite a long number 8. And number 9 was the confidence in numbers. So that is actually 1 month on a tracker, and all the blocks of colour are where names have been removed for obvious confidentiality, and it's just a kind of screenshot of another PowerPoint. What we did was we created a tracker which across the top was all of the continuity teams, and then underneath you can see the green on the left. That starts off with all the staff who in the establishment at one of our acute sites, the purple, the next row in is the staff at the next acute site, and then the community teams below it. So on 1 month's time, you can see, which is why it's 5'6" high, where all of the midwives are on every month. And that was great, and that's what we thought we needed to be able to manage this behind the scenes. But we were wrong, because actually that's what the staff needed to see on a very, very detailed basis in order to buy in with the safety. So what we ended up with, I walked around several of the teams with a trolley dolly case, bringing back in the aeroplane, full of these big sheets to say, on junction 2 of the phase 3 of the tracker, on month May, we will have this number of midwives in acute unit 1. This is what we'll require. That will require a 84% roster fill. In unit 2, we'll have a 90% roster fill. And in our community teams, we'll have 1 to 96. And in the Infinity teams, we'll be delivering 90% birth availability. They're just examples, but they're the kind of metrics that we're measuring against every month at every juncture of this rollout. And to give an example of where we are today, yesterday was our meeting with our execs. We do it once a month. We talk about where we are at every part of that juncture, from an acute unit on both sites, from traditional units that are left, and from the Infinity teams, which is our continuity out there. And because of a slight increase in our vacancies, we're going to pause our journey at junction 2 just for till we get some of those vacancies filled, because that's the right thing to do to keep our services safe. And as soon as those vacancies start to fill, we'll move to the next part of our roadmap. And that's what we've said we will do every month with our executives, including our non-exec and our chief exec, in order to give that assurance to our staff, but also to our board. And I think that's really, really important. And with that, hopefully will come the trust that what we're doing is safe as we move through all of this. Number 10 is communication. On this one, I will say sorry, because it's really hard. And I think communication, if we look at any of our RCAs, our incidents, it can be, again, a thread through many things. And when we look at Swiss cheese, it goes through every hole. So communication is really, really hard. We've got 262 midwives, slightly less with our vacancies that are in it, but we have got 262 midwives in our establishment. We've got 25 consultants. We've got a big team of specialist midwives. We've got lots and lots of users. And we have got an executive team, the chief executives, that are very bought into this and need to have bi-directional communication as well. Through our consultation, we did over 240 one-to-ones at that point in time, and they continue. We did team sessions twice a week. I have been known to do a Teams session on a Sunday lunchtime with a midwife's husband who wanted to know about how she was going to manage her children, moving towards continuity. So as my partner was making the Yorkshire puddings, we did a Teams and talked about it with the family. But that's what, that isn't exemplar. That's actually, we need to do that, but it takes time, it takes energy, and it's the same questions that come up time and time again. But it's important to every one of those midwives. And we didn't get it right every time. There were still people felt that they weren't listened to. We had WhatsApp, because what we found was if you send a WhatsApp message out, you can hit about 30 or 40 people within about 2 minutes. Emails followed that. We had working group sessions looking at the numbers. We now have operational board meetings, project board meetings, board engagement and board assurance, and we're trying to create transparency. We will continue to get it wrong as much as I try to get it right, that I think is one of the biggest challenges. So here's the freebie. As anyone who knows me, I was never going to stop at number 10. I was always going to go for the little extra bit. So the freebie is don't be afraid to change. And I've coined a new phrase, and I've Googled it and I can't find it anywhere. So maybe it might be our new phrase that we can start to use. But reflect to perfect. So people have said to me during this consultation, you're changing what we're doing all the time. You're moving how the teams are formed. You're moving staff out of different teams, and that's often due to the one-to-ones. But actually, we need to reflect to perfect. We don't get it right in the first instance all the time. I'm sure the COVID vaccine wasn't wasn't made in the first attempt. It's okay to develop and improve. We can say sorry for it. And I coined the phrase sorry, not sorry in a meeting once because I was saying sorry for changing things. And I thought, no, I'm not sorry, actually. It's the right thing to do, of which people thought was really funny. Be objective, listen to the team, stand by your belief. Some days when, I remember one day when I came back from annual leave, I was talking to Lesley about it last week. I came back from annual leave and we had lots and lots of concern. And I remember the matron saying, Jo, are we doing the right thing? And I remember the staff saying, we're worried about the staffing and how this is going to work. And the chief executive said, hey, we're doing the right thing. This is fine, isn't it, Joanne? And I turned to Tracy Cooper, who was our regional chief midwife, and Trixie while I was on Bluetooth coming down the A1 between the units and said, I need some support. We are doing the right thing. And they'd all looked at the plans within minutiae detail, and they said, yes, we are. So share your belief, continue. If you can close your eyes at night with integrity and continue to believe, then we will make this happen. We will take our service, our women and our professionals to the next part of our generational change, and we will make a difference. So keep the belief and we will get there. So the final thought, sorry. Everyone's scared of change. We are all scared of change. Even me, I get scared of change too, but be kind to each other. Try and be objective. Open your mind to what it could be like. Get involved, because if you can be involved in it, it takes away that control and you can start to influence what's happening. Reach out for support that day when I rang Tracy on the A1 and share your experiences, because actually we're all going through the same thing.